The history of birth control and its controversy. We've been hearing about budget cuts, religious objections, and scientific advances, but where did this all come from? From hours of researching websites, blogs, and books, I've learned one thing. Birth control is interesting. And like most interesting things, it has a rich history and a lot of controversy surrounding it. According to Mosby's Dental Dictionary, birth control is defined as a regimen of one or more actions, devices, practices, or medications taken in order to deliberately prevent or reduce the likelihood of pregnancy. Current methods include shots, pills, patches, etc. And although this may seem pretty common to most of us, birth control hasn't always been this way. According to the Healthcare in Schools Guide, birth control is thought to have a history that goes something like this. In ancient Egypt, they relied on food mechanisms like sour milk, dates, etc. Pretty weird. Ancient Greece, they were big into plants, cedar oil, lead ointment, etc. During the Middle Ages was when science kind of started to come into it, more education and training. They didn't just have an illiterate midwife in the house. They went to hospitals or actually got people that were trained at medical school to deliver the babies. Scientific beginnings started in the mid-18th to 19th century, which was when more methods were developed and big steps for scientists came apart. During the late 19th century, however, was when religious observances started to take a toll on the advances. The Pope ruled that he didn't believe in birth control and etc. But it didn't completely stop it. They found more biological discoveries about the reproductive system in general. In the 20th century, even more scientific advances came into play, like the pill, more modern things, condoms, etc. As you can see, many options have been developed throughout history. Within the subject of birth control, the arguments and points of view are almost as diverse as these options. During 1873, the Comstock Law went into play, and it said that birth control could not be involved in the mail system, and I think that they did that just because it was the only way they could get a federal issue, because in general, health issues and birth control would be a state issue. But then about 20 states passed laws resembling a prohibition of birth control. And Andrew Comstock, that's pictured on the left, he actually founded the New York Society for Suppression of Vice, which managed public principles and suggested people burn obscene books. In 1921 was a really big year for the birth control movement because Margaret Sanger came into play. She grew up in an Irish Catholic family. She watched her mom go through 18 pregnancies and 11 live births, and she was she watched her mom just suffer an agonizing death. Her body was just worn out. So she decided to write a paper called The Woman Rebel, and she founded the American Birth Control League. About 10 days after that happened, the police raided it because it was against the Comstock Law, and as you can see on the right. And that ended up turning into Planned Parenthood, and she's predicted to be one of the most influential women of America. In 1965, Griswold versus Connecticut struck down the birth control prohibition and established a right of privacy between couples. These are two executives of Planned Parenthood celebrating that law went through in Connecticut. In 1970, Title X came into play, which provided subsidized birth control for poor women. In 1982, federal funding for abstinence-only education began. In 1982, it started with about $4 million total allotted, and in 2007, it capped at $176 million total. So that was a big step. That was a billboard in inner city Baltimore that was posted as part of that movement. In 1996, pharmacist Karen Brower was fired for refusing to distribute birth control. That's her on the early show, and this is the president of Planned Parenthood. They were talking. In 1998, Randy Alcorn, he was a Christian minister, and he published a pamphlet. He tried to relate birth control to abortion. And in present day, this discussion still continues. And does educating students about contraceptive options decrease teen pregnancy or make sex more casual? Birth control and this issue of its availability is obviously not a new issue. There have been many, many reasons why people believe and disbelieve in the availability of birth control from very early until present. But as Sir Francis Bacon said, knowledge is power. In order to form an opinion accurately, it is important to gain knowledge about the subject and its history. I hope that by informing you about the history of this controversial topic, I have helped you gain power through knowledge.
All right.